All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking 6 completely transformative centuries of Indian history. A lot of folks tend to look at this gap, the time between those ancient classical empires and the later medieval periods, as just, well, some sort of dark age, like it was this quiet time where not much really happened. But actually, the reality is the exact opposite. We're talking about a period of intense activity, wild innovation, and constantly shifting powers.
To really ground us here, I want to kick things off with a pretty powerful thought from two French Indologists, Louis Renou and Jean Filiozat. They wrote, India never spoke her last word. In all things, she continues, survives, and renews herself. And wow, that just perfectly sets our core theme for today. We are looking at an era that's literally defined by incredible survival and just constant cultural renewal. It's not just about big empires collapsing, right? It's about what organically grows in their place.
So here's our roadmap for mastering this chapter. We're going to group these 600 years into 5 clear focus areas. Number 1, 6 centuries of renewal. 2, empires, invaders, and dynasties. 3, philosophers and new traditions. 4, trade and merchant guilds. And finally, number 5, recording the past. All right, section 1, 6 centuries of renewal.
So, historians actually often labeled this specific chunk of time, from 600 CE to roughly 1200 CE, as the post-classical or early medieval era. It sits squarely right after the end of the Gupta era and stretches all the way up to the centuries just before colonial growth. And the absolutely crucial takeaway here is that this 600-year gap, it was not a pause button on history. No way. Instead, it was this profound transition phase. We're talking brand new regional identities, massive religious shifts, and entirely new political frameworks being built from the ground up.
Moving right along to section 2, empires, invaders, and dynasties.
I mean, just look at the sheer volume of political activity going on during this era. It's like a giant puzzle constantly rearranging itself. In the 6th century, we see the rise of the Chalukya dynasty. Then, by the 7th century, you have the famous Chinese scholar Hu Zhang traveling through an India that is just bustling and super wealthy. Fast forward to the 8th and 9th centuries, and there's this massive, multi-generational tripartite struggle over the prized city of Kannauj. And then, by the 9th century, boom, the Cholas emerged down south as an absolute powerhouse. Sure, empires rose and fell, but the subcontinent itself, it was never, ever stagnant.
And you know what's really fascinating? Even amidst all these continuous wars and struggles for supremacy, art, culture, and monumental architecture absolutely flourished. A perfect example is the incredible architectural marvel of the Shore Temple at Mamallapuram. This was built during the reign of Narasimhavarman II of the Pallava dynasty. Kings basically used stunning temples exactly like this one to signal to everyone their divine right, and, of course, their immense, immense wealth. But hey, it wasn't all just building pretty temples. These empires also faced some seriously severe external threats. Enter the Hunas. These were fierce nomadic invaders originally hailing from Central Asia, and they were terrifyingly good at what they did. They utilized advanced cavalry skills, specifically incredible horseback riding and expert archery, to execute these lightning-fast attacks. They were a massive disruptive force. They had already played a key role in weakening the mighty Gupta Empire previously, and branches of these Hunas absolutely continued to challenge the Indian political order during the time frame we're looking at today. Meanwhile, down in the Deccan Plateau and the south, things were just as fiercely contested. Following the end of the Vakataka dynasty, which you might actually remember from the era of Queen Pravapati Gupta, a huge power vacuum just blew wide open. And this triggered a massive, all-out contest for supremacy among new, super-ambitious kingdoms, all trying to claim the Deccan and beyond. Basically, the map of India was being completely redrawn, generation after generation. Okay, that brings us to section 3, philosophers and new traditions.
So amidst all this political chaos, who was actually shaping the minds of the people? Let's look at one of the most towering intellectual figures of the 8th century, the Kashmiri philosopher Shankaracharya. He radically shaped philosophical thought with a philosophy of Advaita. He emphasized Brahman as the ultimate reality, or pure consciousness, and he contrasted this with Maya, which is the world as we perceive it, essentially an illusion. It's pretty wild to think about. While kings were out there fighting over physical territories, philosophers like Shankaracharya were quietly mapping out the territory of the human soul.
And Shankaracharya didn't just sit around writing texts either. He built lasting institutions. By establishing 4 mathas or monasteries in Badrinath in the north, Puri in the east,
Dwarka in the west, and Sringeri in the south. He essentially drew this massive spiritual boundary around the entire subcontinent. He unified philosophical learning across vast, politically divided regions. He literally created a shared cultural network that outlasted any single empire of the time.
Which leads us to Section 4, Trade and Merchant Guilds.
Think about it. Building majestic stone temples, maintaining huge armies, and supporting all those monasteries, that requires some serious wealth. And that brings us to the economic engine of the era, the merchant guilds. Now, these weren't just small, local mom-and-pop shops. These associations comprised powerful traders, skilled artisans, and super wealthy moneylenders. They managed incredibly vast coastal and inland trade networks, and they formed these massive interregional alliances. These guilds were literally the financial backbone of the era. They actively funded the religious and cultural expansions we just talked about. They were basically the economic glue holding a politically fragmented India together.
And finally, Section 5, Recording the Past. So we've covered a ton of ground here. Kings, nomads, philosophers, wealthy merchants. But it kind of begs the question, how do we actually know all these fascinating details? Like, what makes a reliable historian in the first place? Were the people writing these accounts back then just, hired PR agents for the kings? Or were they actually trying to tell the real, unbiased truth? What we actually see as surprisingly modern standard, set by some ancient historians themselves. Take this incredible quote from Kalhana, a legendary historian from Kashmir. He writes, "That noble-minded poet is alone worthy of praise, whose words, like that of a judge, remain free from love or hatred in relating the facts of the past." I mean, really think about that for a second. He recognized that true history absolutely must be free from emotional bias and royal flattery long before the concept of modern journalism even existed. It really forces us to ask a difficult question. How do you write history without love or hatred? Just think about your own life, your news feeds, your world right now. Applying Kalhana's strict rules of neutrality today would be incredibly difficult, wouldn't it? Which, honestly, makes the historians of the early medieval period all the more impressive for even trying. All right, so we've covered 6 centuries of survival, renewal, and just incredible transformation today. Now, to truly master this massive chapter, retain all these fascinating details about the empires and philosophers we discussed, and to get fully prepared to ace your exams, make sure to grab our exclusive study bundles. You can find the link right down there in the description below. Grab those, keep learning, and as you do, I want you to keep asking yourself, if you were a historian today, what unbiased facts would you record about our current era? Think on that, and I'll see you in the next explainer.